to my YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Adejoh Sunday. Today we're going to continue our discussion on foreign policy analysis. The last video we tried to look at the concept of foreign policy, the factors that regulate or shapes a country's foreign policy. And so today the emphasis is going to be on foreign policy analysis. Having understood what constitutes foreign policy, the factors that shape a country's foreign policy, it is important to now do a diagnosis of the concept of analysis. And so when we say analysis, what are we talking about? More often than not, when you ask students or experts to do an analysis, what they end up doing is a description or a narrative of a phenomenon or a narrative or a description of a particular happening within the global system. There's a difference between an analysis and a description. Analysis is not storytelling. Analysis is an intricate, process. Analysis involves a diagnosis and a prognosis of a particular phenomenon. Now, what that means is that analysis goes beyond the external appearance of a phenomenon. And that's why, for instance, if you go to the hospital and maybe you have a fracture or you have stomach ache and the doctor is not certain as to what is wrong with you, they ask you to go and do a test or to go and do an x-ray. And the whole idea behind the test or the x-ray is for the doctor to see beyond your physical outlook what is going on within you. And so that's what analysis represents, an in-depth appraisal, an in-depth interrogation of a particular phenomenon. And such interrogation is not based on sentiment, it is based on fact, it is based on data. And that's why most times I tell students, an expert in international relations, that your analysis, you must try as much as possible to ensure that your analysis is based on empirical evidence. It must be based on empiricism, pragmatism, and factualism. Not just sentiment, not just description, not just narrative or propaganda. We must be careful not to use propaganda as a tool for analysis as experts in international relations. So, like I said, analysis goes beyond description or telling a story or narrating a story. For instance, I could ask a student to analyze the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, for instance, or analyze the U.S. Vietnam War or U.S. invasion of Iraq. I don't expect the student to give me a story. Yes, it's important sometimes to historicize, but there's a difference between historicizing a phenomenon and analyzing that phenomenon. And so analysis is the process of breaking down. Analysis is a process of in-depth investigation and interrogation of a particular phenomenon to understand the actions and the inactions of states within the global system. You need to be analytical. In other words, to be analytical, you need to be critical minded. Experts in international relations are supposed to be people who have critical mindset, who have ability to question, ability to interrogate, ability to investigate. All of these are important characteristics that you need to possess as an expert or as a student, in diplomacy or in international relations, as the case may be. Having said that, you can't carry out a good analysis without understanding the levels of analysis. Analysis is done in levels. And so until you understand the levels of analysis, these are the factors that shape a country's foreign policy. It will be difficult for you to analyze the behavior of states within the global system. For instance, you want to analyze the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You can't do such analysis without understanding Russian foreign policy, the factors that shape Russian foreign policy, and of course, the levels of analysis. How does the level of analysis, intervene or place out as far as the foreign policy and the behavior of Russia is concerned? You cannot analyze United States foreign policy without understanding the levels of analysis. There's no country in the world that you can analyze our foreign policy unless you understand the levels of analysis, how this affects the behavior of states within the global system. Then, of course, the factors that shape a country's foreign policy, which I've dealt with in one of my videos. So you could also look up the YouTube for that video on foreign policy and the factors that shape a country's foreign policy. Having said that, there are different levels. We have the individual level of analysis, the group level of analysis, the state level of analysis, and the systemic level of analysis. These four levels of analysis are critical as far as analyzing international politics or analyzing the actions or inactions of states within the global system. Individual level of analysis, group level of analysis, state level of analysis, then systemic or international level of analysis. So let's start from the individual. If you are carrying out an individual level of analysis, what are you looking out for? What are the factors you should take into cognizance? You should take into cognizance the individual. You should take into cognizance the temperament of the individual. You should take into cognizance, the behavior, the political behavior of the individual. You should take into cognizance the religion of the individual. You should take into cognizance the educational background of the individual. You should take into cognizance the career, the occupation of the individual. I give you an instance. Do you know that if you must analyze Israel's foreign policy under Benjamin Netanyahu, you cannot isolate that from the personality of Benjamin? That the behavior of Israel in relation to the external environment has a lot to do with the behavior of Benjamin. It has a lot to do with the personality of Benjamin. It has a lot to do with the career of Benjamin. It has a lot to do with the educational background of Benjamin. All of these are very important in understanding, right, the behavior of states. Remember, like we said in one of my videos, that the foreign policy of a state is determined by the head of that state. Every president comes with his own unique characteristics, and you see that characteristics being reflected, in the foreign policy of that president. And that is why the individual level of analysis is very important. What is the temperament of the individual? What is the behavior of the individual? What is his background like? What is his religion like? What is his career like? Right? All of these, his idiosyncrasies, all of these are important. What is his ideology like? All of these are important in understanding the foreign policy of the state. Remember that a state is gregarious, just like man is gregarious in nature. The behavior of states within the international system is a reflection of the behavior of man, of human beings who manage the state. And like I argued somewhere, it is possible that the war between Russia and Ukraine may not even be supported by Russians. However, that's the foreign policy of Vladimir Putin. You cannot explain Russia's foreign policy under Putin without understanding Putin himself. And that's where the individual level of analysis comes in. For instance, I'm an expert in international relations and a political scientist by training. It therefore means that part of the kind of behavior I will elicit will be a reflection of my educational background. I'm a Christian and a Catholic. Part of the behavior I will elicit if I handle political position will have some interference of my religion, right? And even of my dogma as a Catholic, right? If I am a Buddhist, all of these will reflect. And let me give us another example. When Donald Trump became the president of the United States of America and the whole war against terror and all of that, there was a situation where they had to ban flights from some Islamic countries from coming to the United States of America. Do you think that if Donald Trump were to be Muslim, he would put such policies in place? He would not. And so, to a large extent, the religion of an individual, his idiosyncrasy, his educational background in terms of what field of study did he study, right? All of these contribute in shaping the foreign policy of the state And so, to make a good foreign policy analysis, you need to start from the individual level of analysis by understanding the president or the head of such a state and how this person's quality is reflected even in the foreign policy of the state. Right? So that's the individual level of analysis. What about the group level of analysis? Very important. That sometimes you need to understand that the international system is made up of, like we said in one of the videos, state actors and non-state actors. And to a large extent, non-state actors have become very relevant in global politics, that they determine to a large extent who gets what, when, and how. Right? And so to analyze the role of a group in relation to global politics, you must understand the objective of the group. Right? Every group has an objective. You must understand the objective of the group. You must understand the modus operandi of the group. You must understand the mission and visions of the group. You must understand the strategies of the group. And so all of these can help. In fact, you must understand the ideology of the group. You must also understand the source of funding of the group. All of these can help. Just recently in Russia, there was a terrorist attack and over 130-something persons were killed. And recently, ISIL has come out to claim, the attack. ISIL has become an international terrorist organization. And I'm saying that to analyze foreign policy and international relations, you need to understand the group level of analysis. How do you analyze ISIL as an international terrorist organization without understanding the mission of ISIL, the objective of ISIL, the modus operandi of ISIL, the strategy of ISIL, the funding of ISIL? All of these are important in carrying out, better analysis of global politics. Aside that, how do you analyze, for instance, the role of ECOWAS as a regional framework in Africa without understanding the group level of analysis? In this context, ECOWAS can be a group. Yes, it's a sub-regional body, but it is made up of countries within West Africa. Like the African Union, made up of countries in Africa. Like the European Union, made up of countries in Europe and some Western capitalist economy. Like the United Nations, made up of all independent countries within the global system. These are all groups, but their role in global politics cannot be overemphasized. And so to analyze their role, you must understand the group level of analysis. And what are the indicators for doing a diagnosis of groups is to understand the mission, the objective, the modus operandi, the strategy, the funding, and all of that of such a group. And that's the group level of analysis. You must take note of it. Then, of course, beyond the group level of analysis is the state level of analysis. You see, the state is an important component of global politics. In fact, global politics cannot take place without states. That's why, for instance, realist scholars like Hans Mugenthau will argue that the state is the most important actor as far as international politics is concerned. Yes, change in global politics is gradually changing that orientation because, of course, we have seen some non-state actors who are becoming even more powerful than some states. Having said that, you can't analyze the foreign policy of Nigeria without understanding Nigeria as a state. You can't analyze the foreign policy of US without understanding the United States as a state. You can't analyze the foreign policy of Russia. Even if you understand the individual, even if you understand the group, you need to understand the state. What is the political history of the state? What is the system of government practiced in the state? What is the religion of the state? Does the state have a state religion or the state is a secular state? Right? All of these are important. What is the ideology of the state? What is the economic buoyancy or otherwise of the state? What is the population of the state? What is the geostrategy of the state? All of these things are important for you to carry out a good analysis. And so as expert in international relations, or as students of international relations who are soon to become experts, you cannot carry out any analysis without understanding this level of analysis. And I say when you are analyzing global politics in relation to a state versus another state, or the behavior of a state within the global system, you must understand the state as a level of analysis. Individual, group, state, then of course systemic. What are we looking out for under the state level of analysis? We are looking at the political history. Do you know that the political history of a state is a reflection of the behavior of the state even in the 21st century? Why, for instance, are we seeing recent increase by some countries in West Africa who were hitherto colonies of France? Why are they now saying they don't want the allegiance they have with France? You cannot appreciate that without understanding the state level of analysis, that's the political history of such a state. A state that is economically buoyant, it will reflect in the political behavior of the state. A state that has, military might and capacity, it will reflect in the behavior of the state. Why is the United States of America what it is today? It is because of the military capacity of the United States of America. And so there's no how you want to carry out an analysis of America's foreign policy, whether it is the policy of containment or the global war against terror, without understanding that to a large extent the military capacity of the United States of America contributes in shaping her external behavior, and so it's a major tool that you can use, to carry out analysis. The examples are numerous to mention as to how understanding the state level of analysis can help, in your analysis of global politics. Then, of course, the last level of analysis, which is the systemic level of analysis or the global level of analysis, is an analysis that is centered on the global system. Right? In this context, you need to have an idea of the characteristics of the international system. You need to have an idea of global happenings. You need to have an idea of changes within the global system. For instance, we are talking about climate change. Climate change hitherto wasn't an issue, but today is an issue not just in geography or in environmental studies. Climate change has become an international relations subject, because they are global happenings and they contribute in shaping the behavior of states within the global system. Right? What is the nature of the international system in terms of the politics of north-south dichotomy, in terms of the politics of center-periphery relations, in terms of development and underdevelopment, in terms of trade or unequal balance of trade, as the case may be? All of these things are very important as far as your analysis of global politics is concerned. And so, ladies and gentlemen, what we have succeeded in doing is to argue that you cannot appreciate, you cannot understand what is going on within the global system without understanding the levels of analysis. And that as an expert or as a student of international relations, your knowledge of the levels of analysis, your knowledge of analysis, and the levels of analysis is important in carrying out a critical analysis of the international system. And we said the analysis goes beyond narrative. Analysis goes beyond historicizing. Analysis goes beyond telling stories. Analysis goes beyond description. Analysis is in-depth. Analysis is a prognosis and a diagnosis. Analysis is an investigation and an interrogation. And to do this successfully, you must use the various levels of analysis. Number one is the individual level. Number two is the group level. Number three is the state level. Number four is the systemic or international level of analysis. Look forward to more interesting and engaging videos as far as the subject of international relations and international security is concerned. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. For now, it is bye.